Diana, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being a partner in rhyme and a partner in the sublime, a partner in crime. Wait, we're not doing any crimes, are we?
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, thank you for coming to the meeting too yesterday and showing up in solidarity to the planning committee meeting where we discussed community healing gardens. And we'll kind of recap that, but I would love your what's your input? Like what's your insight with what happened? What are some like things to note that you feel and that we can discuss?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me that is still resonating is the fact that the councilwoman left early. And that's the second time she's done this in a community gathering. And this is actually one that she was on the agenda to, address the public for. So to me, that's concerning. And I think that yeah, I'm disappointed, and it kind of speaks to what we're dealing with in terms of communication at the community level.
Yeah, I've experienced the opposite, right? I've had at the Pune CDP when we had a civic action rally in Pune, Ashley Kirkowitz, which is another councilwoman, she came to that and she stuck around for the whole thing, and it was actually really amazing at the end, like her feedback because she listened, she participated, she engaged with the community, she actually sat in community and actually like listened to different ideas that the community had. The reciprocation, even she shared with me later that it felt so good for her to be in that space. It felt good for her to be in that space rather than a place of opposition or antagonism.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, because most of the time when they're engaging the community, it's because there's issues and people are usually angry, and it's not in a space that, like, in the container that you created in that CDP at Puna or the one in Hakalau. It's a very different engagement. So that's awesome. I mean, I was hopeful after hearing that Ashley showed up, and it was such a good exchange that Heather Kimball would do the same. But they're different people. They're also different generations. I think that's also something to consider
Mm,
when we think about how to communicate to people.
right.
That's something I've been definitely learning about how to communicate through generations to
Yeah,
people.
and that's really important too. I mean, the cultivation of these spaces. I mean, I feel let's spin this conversation towards, what was learned from yesterday, right?
Right.
And also what are next steps, right? I think that's also important because really what this conversation is more of an open source opportunity for people to do this in their own communities, right? I gave a presentation yesterday. It's not up on the Hamakua. Look, there I am from the conversations that
Nice.
we had at the other. This is the
Oh yeah.
Hamakua. This is from March 21st. So they
Right.
haven't posted the one from yesterday. I'll definitely share that in the links when that comes up. Like I'll drop it in the show notes so people can look at it and watch the presentation itself. But I digress. So what are the like for you from your perspective? What did I do well? What could I have done better? How can people engage with this?
So I think that the presentation was great. I think it was a really good synopsis of yeah, there we go. Now you can see it. It was a good synopsis of what we've done, and then also where we want to go and what the community is asking for. And I think that the point you got the point across. I also love how you started your presentation with kind of just bringing everyone into the moment, and some sacredness around around the space in general, which we all know is completely missing. And I'm hopeful that with more people like us showing up in the space, and I know Mia was there, which is really great, and she was at the Puna CDP gathering. Um, I'm hopeful that we continue to show up in solidarity, that we can bring the sacredness back into the space, and this dynamic facilitation. So I think it was great. You got the message across, and I also love how you actually asked for input from people in the chat to engage, because a lot of times these presentations are just people are just talking at you, and then it's like you have 1 minute to respond, well 3 minutes if you want to respond, but But most of the time, I mean, in my experience at the last CDP meeting, when I did ask a question to Hawaiian Electric, they totally dodged it and didn't even answer it, the question. So it's nice to be for that reciprocal exchange from the person who is presenting. So I would love to see more of that in these spaces. So awesome job with that. And I think that I just, again, I wish that that Heather Kimball was there, because this is important for her as a councilwoman to hear what has been done and what the people are asking for.
Yeah, and I guess to, piggyback on that too, it for me too, like I mean, I've been attending so many local municipal meetings for several years now, and just watching the same pattern um of not listening. Like just like whatever that is, like not listening. Like so when community members are sharing something, not only is it not listening, but when behind the like when the meetings shut down, when people are when our elected officials and our and the city staff or county staff, a lot of the times they're actually like disparaging community members for having concerns. Like so not only do we not get heard when we're sharing our concerns, but later on we're actually being considered villains for bringing up concerns.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that in the past as well. I can't say that I've seen it, here, because I haven't been behind the scenes. However, there does you definitely feel some tension between the council members and even staff. There's a tension there. It just doesn't seem like there's joy behind what they're doing. And I mean, even at the beginning of the meeting, again, recapping last night, for council member Kimball to start the meeting off with how she's been in budget meetings all day and she's been exhausted, and oh, one more hour of work, can I only show up for an hour? And it's like, okay, fine, everybody agreed, that was okay, and she didn't even stay for the entire hour that she had initially agreed to. So it's unfortunate. And I think Uncle Kalani in the chat, for those of you who were there, dropped some wisdom as he always does. But he's right. I mean, it really is about just electing people who are connected to the issues,
Right.
um, and also once they're in office, like how can we keep how can people be uncorruptible, number one? And I think it's not just one person. It requires
Mhm.
us to come with an approach of electing multiple people
Right.
in that are, on shared values, and so that way we can hold each other accountable.
Right. Right. And it's I think Uncle Kalani also, brought up a point of accountability, right? And accountability, like there are, he even brought up there's properties. I took some notes on it, but like
Oh,
there
right.
are properties that the county owns that they don't do anything with, and nothing is being done. And we could be growing food and feeding people at the very least. I mean, if they want to do something with it later, they can, but right now we could grow
Right.
food. It's good for the climate, it's good for the ecosystem, it's good for I mean, it's beneficial to all. So it's about accountability and if the only places we can address people are these spaces like we had last night where they're not even present, that makes it tough.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I feel like, when I gave this presentation, there were people in the chat because one of the things I asked was this question here is how can the county of Hawaii support community healing gardens? I was really impressed that there were some people who I don't know who they were, right? We didn't know them. They were community members that we didn't know, and they had ideas
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
they dropped in the chat. It was like, whoa.
it's cool to see that, and it actually connects us, because we come into these spaces thinking that we're the only ones who are like, oh, you know, excited to make change. And but meanwhile, all of us at the end of the day, we're all sharing the same experience. I mean, even Heather Kimball. So it's about coming back to that human connection. And that's why these civic engagement activities are so important, because you can't get that in this space that they're currently being facilitated.
Right.
Right, these like CDP meetings, the Zoom, all of this,
Mm-hmm.
you can't create that connection. I mean, you can, but it takes extreme art and skill that nobody has been practicing or really has. And if you're not joyful in what you're doing, it shows. So
Mm-hmm.
um I really liked seeing that as well. It was actually, it was like nice. Okay, we're not
Yeah.
the only ones, you know.
And I'm like, I'm so bummed right now. I'm like actually writing in right now the ideas that people shared because I was supposed to do it in real time during the meeting, but you sometimes you black out in the middle of, when you're
Oh, totally.
facilitating, you just like
Yeah.
you don't even know what's happening, you're just going with it,
Yeah,
you
you
know?
just go. You just go, totally. Yeah,
Uh
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, and also like I don't know, like I'm in me recapping and reflecting from last night too. One of the things I felt, it didn't feel good. Like I didn't I ne number one, I didn't feel this happening to other people when they were presenting. I've been to several other meetings before. The Hawaiian Electric was a good example where they just kept talking and kept talking, and sometimes they were not even saying anything anymore. They were just talking for the sake of talking and weren't even actually adding any value or information that was helpful, and
Yeah.
nobody was interrupting them or stopping them from talking. Or community members would hop on the microphone, or maybe committee members would talk on the microphone, and they would just keep talking and talking. And it's like, like I can literally see the audience leaving the
Yeah.
like plays because they're like,
Yeah.
what is the point of this? And then me yesterday, I was presenting, and several times during the presentation, I felt like I was being like almost like, oh, you're done. Like that feeling. Did you sense that as some of the community?
I definitely sensed it because I actually saw the chair get up. He was, sitting down and he got up and he kind of got in the screen when he wasn't before, kind of like it was almost like the music starting to play when you're like, accepting the award. It was like, oh, like I felt that too, which is funny. So I mean, I wonder if anyone else picked it up. But I definitely felt that, and I was also at the meeting when Hawaiian Electric was presenting, and they just kept going on so much so that we actually didn't even get to agenda items and get to discuss anything that really was relevant. Yes, of course it's relevant, not to say what's relevant, but that people wanted to talk about that was on the agenda. They took up
Right.
a lot of space and didn't actually even address, well, they didn't address my question. They
Or the
addressed the
concerns.
other.
They didn't address concerns. I
Yeah.
mean,
So I
so
think that speaks to the problem with the lack of skill and awareness around facilitation.
hmm,
And if we want to like address these big issues, we really have to do better at facilitating. And actually, what, it reminds me that the chair then brought up, this was after your presentation, but i I don't know if you remember this, but he brought up that they wanted to have a discussion about holding future meetings only in person and not doing Zoom. Did you hear about him say
uh,
that?
maybe I missed that.
But he kind of went over it really quickly because there wasn't quorum, so it's not like any decision could be made. But
Right.
I just thought it was interesting that he was still bringing it up, and then I asked a question about that in the chat, kind of the why, like why is Zoom not an option for people anymore, or what, where's this coming from? And
Right.
it didn't get answered. So even just kind of things like that, I think that's an important question. And
Yeah, I mean, accessibility is like a real thing. I mean, if you think about it, how many people live in Hamakua, right?
exactly.
And how many people are coming to these meetings, right?
Exactly.
It's like, whoa, like that's kind of crazy. And then if you make it only in person, I mean,
Right.
Hamakua is huge, right?
Exact.
That's
That's
like
what I
a
was gonna. Well, that was my point. It was I was asking him like, what's the rationale for this? Like, why is this being decided? And that is really limiting access for a lot of people. If you're gonna choose that, I mean, let's think about elderly folks, our
right,
elders. Let's think about people who don't have cars. Let's think about there's so many so many reasons to
right.
make it as accessible as possible. So, but
So I also pitched, in the conversation, in the presentation last night, I also pitched like that, number one, that these conversations about, it should be an ongoing conversation. This community healing gardens should be an agenda item that comes up every month. I was like, I'd love to be able to keep coming back and keep addressing the public and letting them know, like, here's what's happening. I even asked the community members that were there, of like, hey, leave your emails if you want to attend the physical gatherings that we do, like the ones we did in Puna and we did in Hakalau. We went to one in Kohala, like these, to continue doing these gatherings where we meet in person, we discuss things and have it be more facilitated, more organized, more cultivated conversations. And then on top of it, I also felt like it's important that we continue to meet in these ways, right? Like continue to meet in person, to continue to meet in a way we're also connecting and celebrating our cultures, connecting and celebrating music and food and all these things. I don't think there's any other way around it, in my opinion, because just like we saw last night, like it's not only ineffective, but like does not even have quorum. So like people who are being chosen to represent the people are not even showing up to do
Yeah,
their
that's
responsibility. What is going on?
yeah, yeah, that's a really good point.
So
That's
I
a
mean,
good
so
point.
I mean, I guess my advocacy too is that more people should be signing up. Like what, like we need more people from the community to show up to these meetings and be. It's like one time a month, like literally 1 2 hours a month
I know,
that
and
you have
if
to
we
show
can't
up.
even get people that if we can't even get people to show up once a month who actually volunteered to do this work, we need to reevaluate like the root cause, like what's going on there, I mean, and that's what I'm curious about with all of this local stuff is like, let's look at the root cause. Oh, nice cup. Love that. Nice mug there.
Puerto
Yeah.
Rico, Puerto
Represent.
Rico, Puerto Rico.
So what is the root cause? Like, why aren't they showing up? And if something's going on, then, in their home life, or if are they not feeling empowered in it? Is there something else going on? So I mean, I'm curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, yeah. It also makes me feel and think about like how, like, how can we get more like teachers to show up? How can we get more nurses to show up? How can we get more farmers to show up, right? Like if we have those important community players involved in this process, then actually they can get supported through this process, right? But how can you support a community when they're not represented?
Right. And didn't you share that there was some farmers that had shared with you in the past, like why they weren't coming? Why was that?
Well, one was the actual city council meetings that happened, like the county meetings, because in Hawaii, in the county of Hawaii, it's just the county. There's no city, right? So it's like a county government. And so the county meetings, the official county meetings, are always in the mornings. And so
Right.
farmers, that's like the main time for farmers. That's when you get things done, you know?
Is that still the case?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's a
So
bit
that's a
that's
huge barrier,
a
especially when we're
huge barrier.
talking about, so much farming, um, as so many farmers being a large part of the community, um, and how they're not being able to be represented because they can't even show up to the meetings. Like, come on, we got to do better.
Can't even show up to the meeting. And on top of it too, when we talk about these community healing gardens, I was doing a lot of research around it. And actually these places are ideally a powerful place for farmers, local farmers to get support too, because
Mhm.
it's their knowledge and wisdom
Mhm.
that's gonna activate a community garden and also keep it going because
Right.
and also it becomes a place for them to potentially a marketplace for them to share
Mhm.
about their farm and what they're growing, or it could become a place of reference if they need farm workers and stuff, and they can
Right.
maybe hire people who come to the community gardens and they see how the work ethic, and then they're like, hey, can you come work on the farm? And so there's a lot of synergy there for local farmers to be involved in community gardens too, right? That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think the possibilities are infinite at this point. It's just really about a place for people to gather around food, and actually, and so that was the takeaway, right, from the gatherings, the civic engagement gatherings, and even the circles, is that everybody, even in the health, education, farming, no matter what group they were in, everyone kind of came to this consensus of wanting more community gardens and that are accessible, and they
Mm-hmm,
want the county to support it.
mm-hmm,
So it's just interesting. And I know that there are community gardens that they've started in the past that just haven't been kept up by people. So I mean, there's obviously things that we would need to look at in terms of why they haven't been sustainable in the past. But it's very clear that people want this right now. And if we're talking about food sovereignty and security on an island where we import, 90% of our food,
right.
we really got to start thinking outside the box.
And radically too, because I mean I was like going doing some research, right? And like here's like here's like some crazy. I mean, we have food insecurity is rising in Hawaii, right? The county is 48% of Hawaii families with children report food insecurity, right? Like Hawaii is also squandering its food security, right? Like they're making really bad decisions at the county and the state level. Money is being like not even spent. Like that's kind of like there's like actual money. Like look at this example that state agency were tasked with like buying more local food, and they only spent 10% of the $30 million that they were given.
Wow.
10% was only spent. Yet, like there's farmers that need the money. They're like you could be growing community gardens, which could be feeding people. I mean, like so if we're right now we're at a weird place where the willpower is not meeting the need,
And
right?
just to also clarify, what we were talking about last night wasn't just a community garden where, you have plots and you're growing food. We're talking about a community garden that's also an education hub, that's also a what was it? Education, health, and yeah,
Well-being.
well-being. And so it's basically like a community center that's in a garden. Community garden.
I love that.
Yeah, community garden center. So we need more of these. The children need more of these, and I think if I can sum it up, the best way I know how, I'd have to quote Richard Haw, one of our teachers and mentors, that, what can we do for Keoki and Malia? And then their Keoki and Malias, right? Like we have to start thinking about generations ahead and stop coming with this approach of just band-aids on symptoms.
Mhm. Yeah, we have to and I mean this is a we have to make bold choices, right? Like if we want thing right now where we're at is we're so in the negative that like to get to the positive, you have to make a bold decision. It reminds me of like playing sports and like when you're on a team, like you're like on a basketball or football team, and you've been sucking. Like you've not been doing very good. Your team is not doing really good. Well, you might have to switch if you're a basketball team, for example. You might have to switch and be like, maybe we're not a good driving team. We need to start shooting 3-pointers. And you might
Mm,
have not done that ever before, but you're like, you know
right,
what? We haven't been winning. We haven't been
right.
doing well. Okay, everybody, let's
Yeah,
start practicing 3-pointers and we're gonna start shooting 3-pointers. And
yeah,
you have to make that bold decision because it's like, oh, you already know what's happening the way you're going.
right,
So maybe
right.
we got to try something different and we have to be bold about it.
Yeah. And I also wonder, like, sure, let's keep showing up here and that's what we have to do. But part of being bold is also just doing things that, and not waiting
Yeah.
for the local government to approve it. I mean, because we know that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bringing up things last night, which I love that you brought up the Giltrack Farm,
Hmm.
which for those of you who are unfamiliar is a plot of land in
Hmm.
Albany, California, that was basically taken back by the people, and so yeah, there we go, Giltrack Farm. So it's possible, it was owned by it was a plot of land that was initially owned by UC Berkeley, I believe,
Hmm.
and it was a community supported land back movement.
Hmm.
So how can we start thinking like essentially like this? Because we're talking about food here, and at the end of the day, council members, people, all these people, they all got to eat too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they might be comfortable in their situation right now, but um and at the end of the day, this affects all of us. And so how, like, I think we need to remind each other of this.
Yeah, and it's important too that we start to like cultivate more of these conversations and actually even from our meeting last night, like I'm thinking like how it might be valuable to start creating like a seed circle, like a seed circle that can meet not just once a month, but maybe every week. And it is about cultivating not just the conversation, but actually the movement toward like the physical movement of what is the location, where is this place gonna be? What is it gonna be somebody's farmland that they donate? Right to this cause, or is it the county that goes, hey, we have this place. I brought up this thing. Do you remember this place? Do you know what? Does this look familiar? So this is the senior spot, right?
Oh, oh, that's the spot. Oh
So
yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
this is,
Okay.
those are the senior homes.
Yeah.
Remember
Oh my
this?
God.
These
Hmm.
senior homes. So like maybe you can reflect, like what happened? Like what did we learn about
Yeah.
these senior housing?
So yeah, so this group of seniors is being forced to rip out their gardens that they've cultivated themselves
The
because they're not
super humble
just
gardens. Okay.
just super humble, like some tomatoes, some herbs, some squash, very simple. Um, they have been forced um, to rip up their gardens, tear them up, and they're being threatened with eviction if they don't do so. And this is what is the name of it? I couldn't think of the name last night. I wanted to write it in the chat, but it was like Hawaii Housing Federation,
Federation or something like that. Yeah.
something like that.
And they get a
And
lot of county support and
and we
funding.
and we essentially were walking and ran into these two seniors, this 96-year-old woman who was a physical therapist who was rehabbing from a hip replacement, and one of the other seniors was there with her, and they were sharing their story with us. And I mean, it was appalling to hear what they were going through. This woman who is 96 years old, she was just like, I should be like coasting right now and being able to grow my herbs and enjoy being home. And now I can't sleep at night. She's having anxiety. She had them coming and pounding on her door. The woman, I guess there's one woman who's the representative. And I wish we're working to reconnect with them. They're supposed to email us their information, but I'm really hoping that they can connect with some sort of like legal aid support or something, or the council member, because I, like this is appalling, and it's the
And
way
you
that
could
we're treating our elders.
and you could see this too right here is that look at all this land.
Yeah,
And
so it's the land.
they were just doing it right in front of their little like small little thing. But
Yeah,
like look at all this. Like this could if they're interested in, if it's going to help their health, if it's going
right.
to be beneficial to them being outside, fresh air, planting, working with the soil, bending, stretching,
Yeah,
digging, right? For seniors, this is super good for their health. Yet because this land is the landscape companies have a contract to deal with this. This
and
is what we're
because some of their the pricing of their housing is also subsidized, they're also being shamed
yeah.
in by this federation group about the fact that, well, you're basically living here for free, and all of this BS. And it's really horrific what we're dealing with. And again, this is an organization, a company that's getting county funding, and this is the way our elders are being treated.
So I mean, okay, fine. There's always many ways. I mean, I think Richard has been really reminding me about this that let's come up with several solutions to the problem. Like, yes, one solution is fighting these organizations and being like, no, we want to be able to like and doing a whole legal battle. And that's one way, right? But then another way is right there is a that right there, D, is a community. It's a community center that the county owns.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So that thing right there, this building right here, okay, it's not even that anymore, right? Do you remember what it looks like? It's like renovated,
Yeah, it looks pretty brand new, actually.
right? And next to it is a plot of land that's not being used. It's like could easily be a community garden
Yeah, kind of right in front of the palm trees
right in
area.
front of the palm trees right there. And that's right next to the senior housing, like it's across the street, right? So that's another pivot is if the county goes, all right, we know the seniors want to do this. The kids would benefit from this. The kids in the community, I saw a lot of kids walking around with their moms and dads, right, on a walk. Here's a place that could be a community gathering space where people can grow some vegetables and fruits and maybe some herbs and they can share it with each other in the community. And now the county has supported this. There's nobody, we don't got to have to deal with the federation or the corporation or whatever's going on over there. Everybody seems to be much more happier. And also the county is doing something good. Heather Kimball can be a part of it and she can put it on her resume that she's doing something for the community like that. I mean, it could be a win for everybody. So
Yeah,
we can solve problems not always by being
by
antagonistic,
fighting.
right? By
Yeah.
fighting.
And that's kind of the trend that I'm seeing. I mean, even in the Coconut Wireless chat, there's some people getting all fired up about potentially people wanting to clear some land for unknown use. But again, it becomes this very reactive response. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, this is why we have to keep showing up, because if, builders are coming in and doing this, if we are ahead of it, then we won't even have to deal with that,
Right, right,
because we all know that it's better to be proactive than reactive.
right, right.
So
And also like practicing political willpower. Like, what is political willpower? Like yesterday we had a few people show up, right? If we gathered about like, this is my opinion strategically, if we had about 40 to 50 people organized, we have like Tamor and we have Uncle Klein, we have if we have 40 to 50 people, right? We got Antoine out there, our French brother. We get 40 to 50 people to all say, we want to create a community garden there ASAP for the seniors. That's what we want to do now, right? 40 to 50 people to come and say that at the county meeting, not the CDP meeting, at the county meeting, be like, hey, we are showing up to call to action, this action from the community. We want this ASAP, right? Boom. Watch what would happen. It'd be
yeah,
crazy. Because that's 40 to 50 voters.
right.
For the county members, for like Heather Kimball, that's 40 to 50 swing of a vote for
Hmm.
her. That's pretty big because that's 40, that's not just 40 to 50, but it's 40 to 50 also of the partners and friends of those people
Yeah,
who are saying
right.
we want this.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But
I
that's
mean,
my strategic
anything's
opinion.
possible.
I mean, it's my strategic opinion that like, okay, here is a call to action that we could do. I mean, it's we know there's a problem. Like
Yeah,
we've seen it, we've listened to it,
right.
we see that there's a problem, right? And a part of that problem is who has the creativity, the political creativity to solve that.
Yeah, I think that's you nailed it. That's what's missing is the creativity. And also, how can we begin to step back from the all too common phrase of like, oh, well, that's just the way it is, or that's the way we do things, kind of a thing. And no, that's
No,
that's just not acceptable anymore,
no. No, exactly. And also what's going to take us out of this pandemic fatigue or this pandemic fugue? I should say fugue is the right word because we're like in this fugue of illness.
What is a fugue?
Fugue. Oh, okay, I'll show you that. Fugue. Fugue.
It
Fugue
sounds
is a
is
cool
that
word, right?
French or something? No, what is that fugue?
Fugue is in music, a fugue is a contrapuntal compositional technique in two or more voices built on a subject that is introduced at the beginning in imitation.
Hmm.
So it's like in music, it's really cool because it sounds really cool. But the English term fugue originated in the
French,
16th
yeah, it is
century
French.
and from the French word fugue and the Italian fuga. This in turn comes from fuga, flee or chase. So to me,
Okay.
fugue is like a state of consciousness that is like, it's like there's a lot of like, it's like it makes you feel like, whoa, what's going on? Like it's not right. Like things are not right. Like I need to
Gotcha.
get out of here.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean if you feel like you have to flee, that
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Right. So there's some music is good, like sometimes really good music, like especially classical music, they'll put a fugue into the thing just to create
Elicit
a
that response.
separation because
Uh,
you'll appreciate the harmony much
uh-huh.
more if you create this
Uh-huh.
harmony.
Totally. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, then I mean with relation to this collective fugue, I guess you could say that's been created over the past few years. Yeah. How do we get away from that? Because we know that being in this fight or flight or this flight response, we're not even in fight anymore. So if we're talking about fleeing, we're talking about flight, get out, trying to get
But
out
we
of
are in
it.
fight too, because you see how people are
And the
so
fight.
quick. They're triggered. Everybody is triggered. It doesn't matter what side. You could be woke or
Yeah.
not woke. You're triggered if somebody calls you out or somebody questions your behavior, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
toxic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people are fighting.
Yeah.
They're not just running.
It's true. It's true. So that getting out of that response, that reaction, actually it is a physiological response, but it's very reactive.
Yep.
So how can we get out of that and
Yep.
take a pause to imagine, what's possible if
Yeah,
we
this place right here, like it's just like, is there any way around this? I just had a meeting this morning with a woman who was a part of the urban garden projects that were in Denver, Colorado, and she was just describing how powerful that was for building community. She's like, it was
Mm-hmm.
beyond just the gardening. It like
Mm-hmm.
built relationships, it built trust in the community. It built it also, she also was explaining how this DEI stuff, it was actually embodied rather
Yeah.
than performative, right? So like there was more inclusion, more diversity, more equity because people were showing up equally together to work on. So you had somebody who was socioeconomically super wealthy with somebody who was like not wealthy, and they were working in the garden together and having
Mm.
communication. Where else does that happen in a real way?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point because where else are we going to put this into practice? We can talk DEI however much we want, but then yeah, until you're actually practicing it, it is all performative. It is just checking a box that you okay got that certification, or oh, we're aware, we're culturally aware.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
well, so in regards to that, in the context of what you're studying, and I'm gonna give a little shout out and a little pitch because you and Minnie are gonna be facilitating a training at the Sedona Yoga Festival, which is coming up later this month. So people can still sign up to come to that festival. It's in Sedona. It's a yoga and a consciousness festival in the heart of Sedona, and it's gonna be all around Sedona. And you and Minnie are doing a specific training. What is it about?
Well, before I talk about the training, I got to give you a shout out for making that possible. So thank you and honoring you for pitching us for this amazing opportunity because that's what it is. It's an opportunity for us to share what we have learned through our trainings as clinicians and also through our experiences and really bringing that to the yoga space kind of with this yoga lens, like weaving it into yogic philosophy. And so, yeah, so we're doing a trauma conscious yoga training that is initially designed for yoga teachers. And we have decided that this is applicable for everyone and relevant to all of our experiences. So everyone is welcome,
Thanks.
healers, educators, whatnot, and so we're going on a 4-day journey through through what we like to call trauma, and how it relates to our work as people in a community and a shared collective experience.
I have a friend who signed up who was a prison guard for
Oh
many years, and
wow!
she's specifically coming from Wisconsin for this trauma training,
Oh my gosh, that's
right?
amazing!
From that lens, from the lens of being
Wow.
somebody in the rehabilitation
Oh
space,
wow. Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how toxic it can be too. She's had some really bad experiences. Which I feel anybody in any space we're dealing with trauma the past few years, we haven't been given the tools to deal with it well, right? I mean, I watched you as a nurse in the pediatric ICU, how you weren't supported by the administration, you weren't supported by the community. Like everybody was putting up signs and posts about healthcare heroes, but there
Heroes,
was like
woo!
nobody. But when you guys were
Hang
protesting
your
on the
hat.
street, but when you guys were protesting during the pandemic, nobody came to the protest.
Yeah,
Not even the
yeah.
media showed
It was
up.
a
I was like,
joke. It
what
was
the heck?
total joke. I know. Um, and yes to everyone. Everyone, we've all. I mean, if you're coming out of the last 3 years, like everybody has experienced some form of trauma, right? And then to layer that on top of like our ancestral trauma and all of the other things that we're carrying from behind and carrying in our experiences in this life, we're all dealing with something. And so, thank you for recommending, to your friends to join because I think um, it will be a good experience. We really are just wanting to create a space for these conversations and for people to feel that we can still talk about this and remain connected, like to our hearts.
Right.
And that's what's most important for me is because a lot of these spaces that are talking about trauma informed care or awareness or the deeper rooted things when we talk about decolonizing mental health and trauma work in general, like
Right.
those are like heavy topics,
Oh yeah.
and so they can feel very aggressive, and so we're coming with love, and we want to speak truth and stay true to our experiences and true to what's happening, and how can we all still come into this unity consciousness that we all need each other, and that it's not about what's the word, when you point, like pointing the finger at anyone,
Or
um,
shaming or whatever.
shaming, right?
But I digress too. People are also what I've noticed is people assume the shame. Like they
Yes,
take on the shame. Like I've noticed how like people they just take on the shame. They're like, you're shaming me. And it's like, wait, hold on. Where? Like that's something you have to start to address. Why are people feeling ashamed them on their own?
yeah. Well, and I think that that's just an invitation. That's an invitation for, to get curious about why you're feeling that someone else is shaming you. Like, where is that coming from? Because, we all know that we that you can't make me feel a certain way. You might hurt my feelings. However, like, it's up to me how I want to respond to that, how I want to internalize that.
Well,
So
yeah, that's why they also say know thyself, right? Why
yeah,
that's
that's a huge
always in
one.
every spiritual tradition ever created. And you don't have to even be spiritual, you could just be self-development. You
Yeah.
it's like know thyself because nobody can affect you with any words or anything they ever say to you if you know who you are and why
Yeah.
you are and what you are.
And if we really are on this like liberation path of the yogi, of, of karma yoga, then it is about detaching from the ego, which is also necessary, right? We need the ego. We need our egos for survival. We need it for so many different ways. But, when we're starting to project things onto others because we're internalizing and not addressing our own shadows, we've got to start getting curious about that. Um, so,
Yeah, big time. So
yeah.
so that's a nice plug. Okay, so to cap this conversation, what is strategically, what's their next steps? What do you feel is wise for us in this, this community garden education wellness hubs? What how should we proceed?
I mean, initially my suggestion is to just directly reach out to Heather Kimball.
Mm,
I, however, like, I think that that might be a good strategy to just say, like, whether she responds or not is on her.
mhm.
Um, However, I do think that these meetings need to happen more than once a month. And I don't think that anything is ever, I mean, I've experienced this even just having a nonprofit and in my own personal work, is that you can't get anything done when you're meeting just once a month. Like, it's just, how do you gain momentum? How do you gain like excitement? How do you get anything done when you're just meeting for once a month? And especially when it's not facilitated correctly with that intention to really get stuff done. So, I mean, I that would be one of my suggestions, but what do you think?
I mean, I agree with that. Like creating more of like a almost like a mutual aid slash like, some sort of I've been talking to Mia about this actually is like creating some sort of citizen journal, right? Like where there is even if people can't come to the meeting, they can go to some digital publication to know what's happening, what's going on, what are next steps, what are classified, what are education like that somebody was asking like what to grow, like sharing farming education with the community, like something like that.
I
That
also think that you I can't believe we didn't even talk about this because this is such a huge issue as to like when we're talking about barriers to getting involved, especially with millennials, is the tech. Like, let's talk about the tech, right? So yeah, using some sort of tech platform to bring people together where, like you said, if they weren't at the meeting, because even there were a couple of people that reached out to me on Coconut Wireless, they were like, oh, I can't make it to the meeting, can you please like keep me in the loop because I want to try and go to the next one, or I want to know what happened. And
yeah.
they might not be, it's kind of like a labyrinth trying to figure out, like, getting onto the county website and trying to figure out like how to
They're actually pretty good. I got to give Hawaii County
compared to
some props.
others.
We were in
Compared to
El we were
others,
in
yeah,
El Cerrito,
that
which
was
is
bad.
the heart of Silicon Valley, right? They got contracts with Microsoft, they have contracts with Sky, they have contracts with
Yeah,
all these like tech companies,
yeah,
but their system was like from
it was
19 like
bad.
90.
You're right. You're right. You're right. So in comparison, it's much better, and it's still pretty bad. So
Okay.
so so yeah. So maybe maybe we create some sort of a platform. I mean, I think we asked when we were talking to Maddie, and you guys had asked the people in Puna like what was their preferred method of communication. Um, I'm curious what the results were with that. I think she said email. And then when we were collecting information, a lot of people wrote down their emails.
Yeah.
However, I don't feel that email is the best way. And I feel like a lot of things get lost in email. I know I get email fatigue, but if there was a like an app like Democracy, like what you guys are creating, if we could get some funding behind that app that actually, you know, creates these chat rooms and updates and so that it looks cool. You know, let's take like Mighty Networks, for example. That's like
Yeah.
a network that is for specific in
Right.
groups of
Right.
people, right? Like we could do something like that on Democracy, specific to the civic engagement. And that's what I envision as being a way to kind of galvanize more
Yeah,
people.
it's like I guess I feel like maybe I should get Matt Damon or something to like pitch it because it looks like when a celebrity pitches even a scam, everybody jumps on the scam. But like we're like not doing a scam and we can't get any money. So it's like should we just do say we're a scam and then people will be like people give
No,
us money? Like what the heck is the deal? I mean look at the past few couple of years. Look how many
I
things
mean
got
that's
funding. What have they done? Like what
I
have all
know,
these things that these tech
I know.
companies done with
I
the
know
funding?
so many of and like I know a lot of our friends in the tech industry in Silicon Valley have been like, you would not believe the ridiculous shit that gets funding. Like they're just like because they're seeing what we want to do and they're like, oh yeah, but then okay, well then where's the money? You know, so I hear you. I hear you.
Don't even need a lot to. And I get
How much?
messages
So
from
then, how much would you say that you guys need to get that off the ground?
probably like 100 to 200,000 to like do something really like really awesome, you know?
Where it's ready to be like, is it beta? I don't know what the terminology is,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
a
totally.
beta
Like
test.
like
Like,
beta test. I forget those even words. We could do an omega test. I mean, really,
oh
it's
yeah, I like
about
that.
it's about like right now there's a really big problem with communication
Yeah,
between any like local
and
municipality
transparency.
and transparency between local municipality and the community. Like
Right.
there's like a crazy broken bridge right there. So to build that bridge like
Mm-hmm.
is priceless, right? It's more than just 100 to 200,000 dollars. It should be it's we can't put a money on it because right
Sure.
now it's probably one of the main reasons why corruption festers, right? The
Totally.
reason why you get corruption is because there isn't communication and transparency.
And
Like
then
it's
people continue to feel disempowered and
right,
then continue to not participate. So it
which
becomes this
increases
like
corruption,
vicious cycle, you know?
right?
Totally. And actually that was one of the things Mia said when you were asking for feedback of how people felt after going to these is she said empowered. And that was really, really awesome to hear and to see her say because I think that was definitely a shared feeling among most of pretty much everyone who went. That was the feedback we got. So tech, better communication, absolutely. So definitely put that out there. So if anyone is knows of anyone who's looking to invest in some really progressive, forward-thinking tech to engage people at the local level and really inform people, so that we can make some big changes. Basic stuff. We just want to eat food, and we just want
Yeah,
to connect, and we want to be healthy, and we want our kids to you know, we all want the same fundamental things, right? We want our kids to be healthy. We want generations to come for it to just be better for them. So let's think about that, right?
yeah, and also like I can't help but I was just sharing this a few hours ago. Like can we at least make a honest, truthful attempt to solve the problems that we're dealing with, whether it's food insecurity or it's mental health or it's houselessness or it's housing prices or blah blah, all these different issues, right? Can we this poly crisis? Can we address these issues the way that nature does? Like, what if we don't approach it with like, oh, like this person has all the answers and this person has all the answers, and we're only going to focus on this person who has the answer or this company, but like
Right.
we actually approach it how nature does, where there's multiple things happening at the same
Yeah.
time, where it's mycelial, where it's decentralized, right? Can we approach it from that, right? Where we're not like, it's not just dependent on one person saving us.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to get away from that. I think that's a really good point, especially when we're thinking, I think that's what we're so used to as well, because when you think about representative democracy, like what does that mean? Okay, I vote for someone who's going to represent me and my
Right.
needs.
Right.
Okay, well then how do you hold them accountable? You keep showing up, and you keep when they make decisions or they don't listen, you say, "Hey, you're not listening to me. You know what? I'm going to vote somebody else in." So, but that second part about holding accountable and continuing to be engaged throughout the process outside of voting is is where the disconnect is what I've seen over the
Right.
years.
Right.
So it requires like even more participation
Yep.
in between election cycles.
Yep.
So how can we get people excited about that, and inspired to be like, hey, I actually do have power, or hey, you know what, Indy, I want you to run. So in fact, we're going to write your name in for the on the next ballot.
Yep.
So anything's possible. We just got to keep showing up. So,
Only if I could wear my bangles, my like
ooh,
my when I go to this go to the county meetings,
you
like a
just dance on
cowboy,
the table.
like a
Dance on the
cow,
table.
like an Indian cowboy. I'll be dancing on the table.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
well, thank you so much for participating in this discussion and recap, and
Yeah, of
hopefully we can
course.
continue having more of these and kind of like being able to kind of recap these discussions, because maybe people don't end up showing up to the actual meetings, but this can be a way for people to tune in that feels a little bit more, you're getting a more of a balance of the masculine and feminine, you're getting more of a like a caring and a more deeper perspective. And like obviously D, in the future, we could definitely use this too, how we're like looking at different things and researching and popping it up so people can actually watch this on YouTube and see what we're talking about as well.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for being for holding this space for the debriefing. I think that, I mean, as a nurse and somebody who's been in really intense situations a lot, one of the most important things that I've taken away from those experiences is the importance of creating space for these conversations, for the debriefing of like, okay, well, what just happened? Um, how did that feel? And what can we do better next time, or what did we learn, right? And so having these debriefings like in every situation, I think is something that I would love for us to start doing more. So
Yeah.
thank you. That was
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you. Hold on. How do I? Where's the stop button? Oh, there.